Hello friends, my name is Marines, and recently it was announced that YouTube was creating a special, an original, called Booktube, and it would feature Michelle Obama and a panel of YouTubers moderated by John Green. I first saw this announced on Twitter, and in the tweets that were announcing the special, the hashtag Booktube was used. It was incredibly exciting to see Michelle Obama tweet something that had hashtag Booktube in it. I think that that was the primary reaction and the first reaction that we all had when we saw this coming out, especially when there weren't a lot of details that we immediately knew. The panelists that were chosen were Kat from Catty-tastic, Jessie from Jessie the Reader, Ariel, Bissett, Francesca Ramsey, and Julesy. After this was announced, a conversation started developing about opportunities and where they go, and specifically about the lack of a Black booktuber on the panel. I don't want to front load this video with a bunch of disclaimers, but obviously I'm approaching this from my point of view, what I saw going down on Twitter, which is at least partially curated by me, and just talking about, again, how we have these conversations within community, and trying to find the balance of what people were trying to get at, which I think is my first point, that we can look at an opportunity like this and both be excited for what it means about the visibility of Booktube and the opportunities that are presented to people within the community, and we can still talk about how things can continue to get better and how we can open up more opportunities for marginalized creators. I think it's very easy in situations like this to let our emotions kind of flow freely and take that immediately to the internet. I will admit that when I first saw Michelle's tweet, I was very excited, and then as I learned more information, I too was a little bit disappointed with the lack of a Black booktuber present on the panel. I actually ended up having a pretty long conversation with my friends in a group chat about that. I think some of the opinions that I had at first reaction have settled, and I've adjusted some of them, and that is obviously something that happens to all of us as we gain information, as we process. But so many times we're doing that in front of an audience, or taking that immediate knee-jerk reaction to Twitter, and so people get really heated and it starts to kind of spiral that way. I'm not saying that people shouldn't weigh in. I'm not one of those people that, immediately says that it's a pile-on, and I hate the idea that, people can contribute to a conversation, but once they're done with it, that's it. They draw the line and they say the rest is like piling on, or the rest is drama. I feel like social media and these kinds of things are ways for us to express our feelings. I'm not going to tell one person they can express their feelings and another person that they cannot. As I mentioned before, the panel does include 2 Black women and 2 women who I personally really admire. I've actually been following both of them since I first went to VidCon, and I saw them both participating on panels, and I just have been following their content since then. I think they're both creators that make a lot of sense for the project that this was, but I think that because we all saw it pitched as like hashtag Booktube, we had a different idea of what maybe it was going to be, and it's very difficult to talk about because we haven't seen the finished product. We also don't know what went on behind the scenes. We don't know what the process was for selecting the people who were going to be on the panel, and we don't know what the finished product is going to look like. So me included, we are all talking from a place of very limited knowledge or very limited information. But like I said, because we saw it pitched as hashtag Booktube, I think that that gave people certain ideas, myself included. Now, this conversation about who should have been picked and what we would have liked to see has led to some accusations of gatekeeping within the Booktube community. I think it's very difficult and it's a little tricky to talk about, so I am in no way wanting to gatekeep anybody. I think the only criteria to being a booktuber is, do you consider yourself a booktuber? And if the answer is yes, congratulations, you belong to Booktube. And I think most of us probably feel that way, that we self-select into this community. I also think though that there is a difference between people who talk about books online in the larger book community, whether that's Twitter or YouTube or a book blog. Like, there's a larger community here of people who talk about books online. There's also a larger community of people who talk about media online or do media analysis, which I think is a little bit different as well. Booktube is such a small community, and it's a subset of that book community and of that media analysis community, and I feel like because we are so small, it can feel like a little bit like a small town, like everybody who's here, and there is a lot of engagement. This is a very highly engaged community, and so when you think about visibility for that community or some sort of highlight on that community, it's difficult not to feel a little bit of ownership ownership over it, though I agree that we shouldn't extend that into gatekeeping and saying that some people are or are not part of this community. I think though that for a lot of people, engagement is key, and not only in terms of how much content you put out or what your content is like, but engaging with the community as a whole. This was such a key opportunity to highlight a Black booktuber, somebody highly engaged in the community, somebody visible to the community. And I'm not discounting the 2 Black women who were featured on that panel, and I don't think that the presence of 2 Black women means that we can't talk about why there should have been more Black women on that panel. I don't want to get too deep into that because this is also posing that I know what went on behind the scenes, and I truly don't, not firsthand at least. And I also am a person who has created an event, and I know that it can be difficult to feature marginalized voices, and the people that we want to feature and the content that we create are sometimes the people who have the most difficulty in traveling and getting to these sorts of events and taking time off from their jobs or things of that nature. It is so much a privilege to be able to travel to events like this or participate in things like this. I don't know what homework YouTube did. I don't know who they asked to be on this panel. I don't know who said no or who wasn't able to. I did have a chance to talk to Kat, and she was gracious enough to answer some questions, to clarify some things for me, and in a way that was very much concerned with not centering herself in this conversation, but willing to provide information in order to clarify some things for people who are curious. For her own part, she said that this whole thing happened through a very tight turnaround. She was asked with a very small lead time in order to say yes or no whether to participate, so it happened very quickly. Kat did say that when she was approached, she asked if any Black booktubers were involved, and YouTube said yes, counting that the women that they had asked to be on the panel, the 2 Black women that they had asked to be on the panel, were involved in the book community. I feel bad for any amount of this that is being taken out on Francesca and on Julesy, because this is, I think, a topic and an issue that goes deeper into Booktube and some things that we've seen time and time again throughout the years. The truth of the matter is that we are already such a small community in the larger grand scheme of YouTube things, and if you look at the top subset of channels, the people with the most subscribers, there isn't a lot of Black women to be found. Because we are already such a small community, there is only like a chunk of that top that really have the numbers to mean anything to people who are playing numbers games. The sad thing is that opportunity breeds opportunity, and visibility breeds visibility, and it is very difficult to break into that, and we see people do it, but it's not usually Black women. All of those feelings were bubbling underneath this announcement. You know, this is a community that has seen, last year there wasn't even a Booktube panel at VidCon, and in years before it was either no Black people or 1 Black person on the panel, and that's really tough to see, and it's a tough environment to create in, and it's something that keeps getting like picked on every time that we see these opportunities come up, whether it's a New York Times article highlighting the community or something like this that YouTube is spearheading that felt like it just missed the mark for a lot of us that were watching it unfold. That said, there is still a lot to be seen. The final product for one, and whether this is a one-time deal or YouTube plans on making this some sort of special or reoccurring thing, and who they ask in the future. I guess the most concise way to say this is that I am most disappointed in an institution that plays a numbers game, and the way that it is so difficult for creators of color to break into the realm where you can even be considered for these kind of top opportunities. And because of the way that opportunity breeds opportunity, time is not necessarily making this better. It's just making it harder to watch happen over and over again. When I was preparing for this video, I did tweet and mention that I was going to make it, and I asked people to submit questions, and mostly it was for me to kind of frame what I was gonna say and like head in a direction. So I got repeated questions about whether or not I thought that Kat, Jesse, and Ariel should have stepped down and made way for other creators. To this I say that one, again, we don't know what went on behind the scenes, and we don't know who YouTube asked, and we don't know who said no or wasn't unable to make it. In this case, it's very difficult for me to say that that should have happened. One, because again, we're not on that scale. We're such a small community, and this is people's hobby or their way of, like, their bread and butter, their way of making money. So for me to say that they should say no to an opportunity like that, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't really think that that's what should have happened. The onus is not on the people who were chosen. I think that it really is on the people who were organizing. And while I think that there was a clear opportunity here to have a Black booktuber, somebody highly engaged in the community, somebody who maybe had already read and talked about becoming on their own channel, that doesn't mean that my wanting that space to be there means that I don't want any of the other people who were chosen to be there as well. Like I said, I think that we can be happy for the people who were chosen and for the visibility that this will get Booktube as a whole, and we can also talk about how things can be better in the future. And in fact, the best thing that I think that came out of this was that I saw people rallying around Black booktubers and just getting their links out there and getting them more visibility and helping them boost their voices within this community, and that's never a bad thing. That's it for me today. Hopefully that wasn't too rambly and all over the place, but I just kind of wanted to talk out my feelings because this conversation is something that I've been talking about pretty much since I got on Booktube. I would love to talk to all of you about it down in the comments as always. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.